Hey, good morning.
Hey, good morning, everybody. So we'll
Hi,
just give,
Dixon.
hey, hi. So we'll just give another 1 or 2 minutes for rest of them to join, and then we'll get started. Okay?
Yep. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. All right, so let us go ahead and get started. So thank you everyone for joining today. So this course is all about FHIR. So as you all know, FHIR is one of the latest standards, healthcare data standards that we have, where we want to exchange the data with the help of using FHIR. And I'm hoping that you guys have little bit background about healthcare. Uh, it's okay even if you don't, but usually FHIR course is taken by people who have little background in terms of in terms of healthcare and data integrations. So we'll have a quick round of introduction of each one of us so that we know about each other, and also I would know what is your background and all. So I'll introduce myself. So as you all know, my name is Dixon. I will be your trainer for FHIR, and I am working as technical lead and architect in various projects. And I also train people online. I train people on HL7, FHIR, Mirth. Uh, those are the three primary things I'm teaching on right now. But I have worked on various types of HL7 integrations, like HL7 V2, CCDs, FHIR, IHE, and using all of these standards, I have implemented many interfaces and also used various integration engines like Rhapsody, Mirth, Integration Buddy, Connector, Ensemble, and so on. So I've been training resources from the past 7 to 8 years now. I was teaching before that as well, but that was in the office space. I mean, within the office wherever I was working. But moved to online training from the past 7 years, and that is going on. So I am looking for each one of your introductions. You can just let me know where are you from, and your background with HL7 in healthcare and HL7 specifically, HL7 or FHIR, whatever you want to specify it as FHIR, and what is the expectation out of this training? Healthcare and IT. So any one of these things is fine. So any of you can go ahead and get started.
Hi, good morning, Dixon. I'm
Hey,
Krishna.
Krishna, sir.
Yeah, I'm basically from Bangalore, and I work for Accolade. So I have around 16 years plus experience in healthcare IT, and basically into the initially I started my career with programming. I was part of the EHR development, and then finally moved to integration. So I've been into this integration space almost 10 plus years. And so I'm more into HL7. I had a couple of trainings in FHIR, but I know got a chance to do the hands-on with FHIR. So we were trying to set up the health lake, all those things, but it's all in the beginning stage. So I just wanted to get to know some addition on, because we did had a couple of trainings in FHIR, but never had an actual implementation. So I don't want to lose my touch. So I just want to, it's almost 1.5 years before. So I just wanted to have something which I can keep up my FHIR knowledge. Okay?
Understood.
That's all.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Krishna. All right. So let's go to Annabelle.
Hi, Annabelle. Good evening, everyone.
Hey.
I'm based in the United States in Dallas. I took into healthcare. I'm a nurse, and I took the Med Connect class. So while I was searching for jobs, I tend to do more jobs that are being in the FHIR environment. That's why I'm coming back to the class.
Okay. Okay. So you want to learn more about FHIR.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let's go to Narendra.
Yeah. Hi guys, this is
Hey.
Narendra. Yeah, actually right now I am doing my master's final semester in Auburn
Mhm.
University at Montgomery, US.
Mm-hmm.
I completed my bachelor's at 2019. After completing my bachelor's, I worked as associate engineer at Virtusa Polaris.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I worked for the project named as Health First.
Mm-hmm.
In that, I worked in technologies like Informatica and Service now. And after coming to US, actually, I started learning HL7 by by taking my brother's suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
So after completing this HL7 part, he suggested me to learn the FHIR
Mm-hmm.
to improve the skills to get the job after completing my masters. So then I started contacting you, and I want to move into healthcare interoperability.
Got it.
Yeah,
Got it.
thank you.
Perfect. Your brother is working in healthcare?
Yeah, he's working in healthcare. He's working as a Rhapsody. He's working in Rhapsody, Orion
Oh.
Rhapsody.
Oh, great. His
Yeah,
name?
yeah, yeah. His name is Rajendra.
Rajendra. Okay. All right. Sure.
Yeah,
Great. Great.
yeah.
Good to hear.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Let's go to Neeta.
Yeah, hi everyone.
Hey.
So this is Neeta, and I'm working in IT. It's been more than 10 years. And from 2018, I'm working in healthcare industry. Mainly the domain is healthcare. And
Mm.
from past 3 years, I started working in clinical data mainly. And 1.5 year, I got a chance to work in CCDA, flat file, and HL7. But this is still new for me, and FHIR is coming on the top of CCDAs. So I just
Right.
wanted to improve my skills so I can get a better job opportunity. And I want to continue in this HL7 and clinical data side. Interoperability consultant, that is the my goal right now to
Sure.
get a good. Mhm.
Sure. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Neeta. Thanks for that brief. Let's go to Suresh.
Hi Srinivas, I'm working as an integration engineer. I have 6 years of experience in that.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, as of now, I don't have any experience in FHIR, so I'm just currently looking for that for my upgrade skills.
Got it. So you have experience with HL7 V2?
Yes, I have experience in HL7V2.
Okay. Okay, great. Great. Thank you everyone for introducing yourself. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'll just quickly run through the course curriculum. I am not sure how many of you have received it. Did you all get a chance to go through it? On what all we are going to cover through this course?
I have not looked.
No, I did not receive it.
Okay.
No, we have not.
Okay, all right. Let me go ahead and run through it quickly. I can have Srinivas share it with you so that you can have a copy. So we'll begin with FHIR, which we'll see today. We'll take a look at an introduction to FHIR. What is the problem that FHIR is actually solving, trying to solve, and where are we today in solving that particular problem, and what are the other industry challenges that can be solved with FHIR. So we'll take a look at start looking at hospital workflow, which is the base where everything gets started. We'll talk about purpose of FHIR. We'll talk about a couple of use case scenarios which solve the problems that we have. And then we'll talk about patient resource structure. So we'll take a very high level overlook at the patient resource. And then we'll talk about the format in which the data get exchanged. So FHIR can be exchanged in 3 different formats, but we'll be predominantly looking at JSON because that is the most common format that we'll be seeing all across the industry. You'll also see XML as well as Turtle, but we are not going to look at those formats as of now. Then we'll take a look at in-depth aspects of the resource. So we'll talk about what is how do we understand the resource structure, what is cardinality, what are the data types, very common data types that we usually encounter. We'll talk about those common data types and understand what is the structure of each of these data types, and how data types are very, very important in building the structure of any FHIR resource. Then we will get into the descriptions, understand what descriptions say, and then we will get into two main resource which are called as ancestor resources. So we'll talk about base resource and we'll talk about domain resource, and we'll understand what are the important elements of each of these resources and what is the significance of those elements. Then we'll talk about constructing a resource. So we'll quickly take a look at how do you create a resource using normal Notepad++. So this is for us to get a hands-on to understand how do we structure a resource. This way we will get to understand the structure of each resources or how the resources are built. And we'll also look at how do we create using a resource structure using a schema reference using VS Code. Then both of these are manual exercises. This is creating a resource without any schema. This is creating a resource with the help of schema support in the Notepad or VS Code, any one of them. Then we will talk about how do you search for a resource. So here at this point, after constructing a resource, we'll be creating a patient record using the resource that we have constructed. Then we'll talk about how do you search for that resource at a very basic level. Then we'll talk about FHIR maturity levels. What are the FHIR maturity model that we have? What are the various levels that we usually see? Then we will jump into the second side of FHIR. So FHIR is mainly divided into two sections. One is the data. The other one is exchange mechanism. Data is all about what we may have seen so far. And then we will jump into the second side of it, which is understanding the REST architecture. So as part of that, we'll understand client-server architecture. We'll take a look at what is REST service, what are the REST services in action. We'll talk about basic principles and URL structure of HL7 FHIR related APIs. We'll talk about what is an API. We'll talk about three main level of interactions: instance, type, and whole system level interactions. And we'll also perform CRUD operations for all of these REST API transactions that we can perform. Okay, we'll be creating a record, we'll read it, we'll see how to read a history. We'll also talk about how to update it, how to delete it, and we'll also talk about how to go ahead and use certain things called as conditional create and conditional update, which are specific to FHIR. But we'll take a look at that. Then we'll talk about searches of these records. As in when we create, we'll take a look at how you can search through the record. Then next we'll jump into other resources. I think by this time, by the time we complete the REST API, we'll get a fair idea about how the data is exchanged in the FHIR world and what is the structure of each of these FHIR resources. Then we will briefly take a look at all the resource structures so that we will get introduced to what are the important elements in each one of these resources that we have. Then we will jump into the workflows of appointments, workflows of orders and results, and see what all the resources that are involved in that workflow. For example, if you talk about appointment related workflow, we'll have many resources like schedule resource, encounter resource, slot resource, and how these resources work in tandem to make sure that the workflow is executed successfully. And what are the few intricacies of these resources, how the data elements change in these resources, keeping in mind about those workflows. So we'll talk about that. So we'll take a look at the workflows of appointments, as I said. We'll also talk about the workflows of orders and results interfaces or orders and results data models. Okay, then we'll talk about resource lifecycle when we are looking at the workflows itself. Then after that, we'll jump into special resources, which are called as bundle resources. So I call them as special resources myself. It is not a naming convention given by FHIR. So these are called as special resources because they perform higher level interactions. So bundled resources are basically a situation where you may have to post multiple resources to the FHIR server or multiple transactions to the FHIR server. So how you can do that using a bundle. We'll talk about contained resources, why contained resources are used, how do you make sure that contained resources are helpful, in what scenarios you may actually choose to create a contained resource and all. So we'll talk about those scenarios. Then we'll jump into the most important part. As a FHIR resource or a FHIR analyst, you may have to go ahead and perform a lot of search for data analysis, or if you're writing a program, you will have to know what is the effective mechanism to call the data back from the server. So we'll take a look at advanced search mechanisms, which will actually help us perform that thing. Especially, we'll take a look at include and rev-include, which will help us to go ahead and include multiple resources when you're working with FHIR resources and getting the data back. Then we will talk about extensibility. What is extension? What is the reason for extension? Why do we need an extension? We'll talk about simple extensions, complex extensions, and we'll also see what are the steps to create it. Then we will go ahead and jump to the practical part of it. We'll see how to convert an HL7v2 message to FHIR, which is one of the most common use cases that we are seeing here. We will be looking at V2, but your use case can be from V2 or from raw data or from CSV file data, anything. It can be anything, right? And then we'll jump into the security aspects of FHIR. So there we will take a look at what are the FHIR recommended security standards that you have to follow. So we'll take a look at what are the security protocols that we have in general. And what is OR2? We'll try to understand OR2 terminology in detail, how the OR2 flow works, because that is the base for Smart on FHIR protocols. So we'll take a look at Smart on FHIR. What is Smart on FHIR? Why is it introduced? What are the advantages of it? Smart on FHIR is built on top of OR2. So the protocols, everything that you have as part of Smart on FHIR can be easily understood if you understand OR2 terminology or OR2 workflow very well. Okay, that's the reason we are going to cover it in detail. And finally, we'll take a look at conformance and profiling. So these are basically the resources which will help us to run through an implementation. So we'll take a look at profiling, what is capability statement, what is structure definition, what is an implementation guide, how do you interpret flags and icons, and we'll talk about final thing called licensing. And then we'll have final topic, which is terminologies. So what is a terminology? How do you use terminologies in real time? What are the various resources that are involved in terminologies? There is a beautiful mind map that we can understand with the help of that is present on the terminology website itself. So we'll take a look at that as well and understand the concept of value sets, code systems using that particular mind map. Okay, then finally, we will take a look at the overview of what all topics you have to complete for your certification. I think by this time, we'll be completing almost 70% of the topics. You will be left up with few topics and you will have to go through them and prepare well for your exam. Okay, and that would be our last session and we will be closing our training. So that would be the course curriculum. I'll be sharing that with you guys. Srinivas will go ahead and share with each one of you. If you guys can drop your email address into the chat, Srinivas will pick it up and send it over. So that being said, let us go ahead and get started with today's content. So by end of today's session, we'll talk about FHIR, where do we use it, and how the name FHIR has come into play, what is the importance of that name, what is the history of FHIR. So we'll take a look at these basics. So let's go to the basics. This is where all gets started, right? I usually cover hospital workflow both in my HL7v2 as well as FHIR trainings. Reason being, there are many times where we'll be coming back and talking about hospital workflow, right? It may be a situation within the hospital, or it may be an hypothetical scenario that you may be thinking of, but end of the day, you may be thinking it from hospital perspective itself, right? So what happens in a hospital? Whenever a patient visits, he will visit the receptionist. Receptionist will ask whether the patient is coming for the first time or has he been to the hospital earlier, right? So if he's coming for the first time, then you will see that the receptionist will take the entire data of the patient and save it in their system electronically. Next, as soon as the patient details are captured, those are called as demographic data. And then an appointment is scheduled for the patient, and that information will be sent over to the doctor's desk. Doctor is nothing but the providers are nothing but the doctors. Now, providers will go ahead and, if they are able to treat the patient just by looking at the symptoms, well and good. If not, they may have to place few lab orders, right? So that a sample test can be done on you, and then you can go ahead and get the results for your tests. And based on the results, doctor will go ahead and provide the information, or basically treat the patient based on the results that he gets, right? So now this situation where patient and doctor are talking to each other and discussing about the problem is called as encounter. Okay. Appointment is a situation where an appointment is booked, a calendar is booked. An encounter is a situation where the patient is actually interacting with the doctor and discussing about his problem. Okay. So once that is done, the labs and lab related charges, provider related charges, and other charges will be sent back to the receptionist desk. Receptionist will go ahead and generate a claim and send it to the insurance company in case if patient has the insurance, or else patient has to pay the entire amount before leaving, right? So this is a hospital workflow. Let's look at the problem statement that it is presenting to us. Now we know that, I mean, most of us know that we have HL7 V2 for all of these transactions, right? So EHR becomes a central data hub or data repository where the entire data is being stored. The data might be from the front-end PM system, mainly by the receptionist, and it travels to the EHR in the form of HL7 V2 messaging system or messaging standard, right? And you may be having data from a provider where doctor is actually entering the data into the EHR directly. There may be few third-party applications which they might be using. In case if that is the case, they may be entering the data in that third-party application, which will be sent as HL7 messages to the central repository. And you may be having situation where lab-related data is also coming back to the HR system, and that is being saved. Finally, there will be a pharmacy entity where you will be sending the data to the pharmacy for not using HL7, but using a different methodology called as ERX. So apparently here we are seeing that there is data getting consolidated at the center, which is EHR system. But unfortunately, there is no proper mechanism for patient to go ahead and access his own information that is present in the EHR. Okay. And then provide consent or provide some sort of updates to his own record. So all of these are not a viable options. Back then, we are talking about a scenario back in 2009, 2010. All right. And this problem has to be solved. And one of the measures in meaningful use in the US is to make sure that patient is engaged with his own data. But here we are seeing about a situation where data cannot be exposed to the outside world. And hence, as it cannot be exposed to the outside world, patient cannot have access to the data. Why it cannot be exposed? Because of a lot of security measures. And usually hospitals don't want to go ahead and share the data outside the hospital. So this is what was happening back in 2009, 2010 at that point of time. Now, let's see how FHIR is actually solving this problem. So in our earlier case, we see that patient do not have access to his own data. Even if he's the owner of the data, he doesn't have access to his own information, right? Now let's look at FHIR, how FHIR is solving this problem. So FHIR can be implemented in two different flavors of solution. So we are looking at one of them. We'll take a look at the next one in the upcoming slides. So the first one is to create a facade layer. So what happens in the facade layer? You can see that we have EHR system. Data is being thrown into the system, or data is being saved into the system by any one of these entities. On top of EHR, you'll be adding a layer called as FHIR. So this is a server-side code that you'll have, which sits on top of EHR with lot of code in there to enable the transactions with the outside world. So this layer that is added will actually go ahead and help you to interact with mobile related devices or system related devices, and exchange the data between these mobile devices and the EHR. Okay, that's what FHIR does. So it adds a layer on top of existing EHR system. That is one solution. As I said, FHIR can be implemented in 2 different flavors of solutions. So this is the first solution where FHIR can solve the problem. Now patient can easily have access to his own information because FHIR is exposing that data to the outside world. And then how do you restrict who can access, who cannot access? What are the security measures that we have? There will be many, right? Many attacks that may be happening. So we have to be very careful whenever we are exposing an API to the outside world. We have to make sure that we are accepting the request only from certain accepted users and so on, something like that on those grounds. Okay, so we'll talk more about how to manage and how to keep it simple yet maintain the security. So we'll be taking a look at all of those aspects in the future session. Now let's look at the second solution that we can implement with FHIR. So you can create a dedicated FHIR repository. So this is another solution that is taken by most of the hospitals in the US, where they go ahead and convert their entire EHR data into a FHIR repository and then expose that data with the help of the FHIR layer. So this FHIR repository that you're seeing here will have all the FHIR data in the form of JSON objects, and that will be saved in the FHIR database. Then from there on, the data will be exposed to the outside world, and you can go ahead and use that either on mobiles or desktop applications or anything. So what is FHIR? So FHIR stands for Fast Healthcare Interoperability Resources. So it is a new data standard to exchange healthcare data between different external entities as well as internal entities. Internal in the sense entities that are present within the hospital. And it solves the major problems that we had from V2, V3, and CDA. So FHIR has learned a lot from its previous experience. FHIR is a standard today, and we see that there are a lot of improvements from V2 and V3 and CDA. Okay, for a small example is having a robust documentation, which was not present either for V2, especially for CDA. There was no specific documentation which will help us understand the structure in detail, right? But with FHIR, that is not the case. FHIR, we have a lot of information, lot of documentation that is available, lot of examples that you can go through. So that is one problem that was solved, but that is just a very small problem. But in real time, when you talk about data exchanges, FHIR solves a very good problem. Now, FHIR uses latest RESTful web service technology, and it uses formats like JSON, XML, RDF to exchange the data. The reason why FHIR is called as smart, not smart, but fast. Why is it called as fast? So many have that question. Why is it called as fast? Because the learning curve that you have to have when you are a developer is you just need to understand the data model or data structure. You don't need to know other web technologies or whether web methodologies like building REST APIs or interacting with REST APIs and other web methodologies that you usually perform day to day are very easy for a certain developer or certain resource, right? And it is very quick for them to implement in case if they understand the structure at a very high level, right? So that's the reason FHIR is called as fast. Then we have healthcare because we are developing it for healthcare. And then we have interoperability because we are enabling multiple entities to talk to each other with the help of data. It is called as an interoperable. And last one, the key term is resources. So FHIR is all about resources. We'll understand more about why are we calling this as a resource in the upcoming sessions, and what is a resource basically mean, and how FHIR is actually using these resources. But apparently FHIR is completely based on these resources that we have, right? And that's the reason they form the building blocks of our FHIR standard. Then we have a scenario where the entire healthcare data pertaining to a patient or the hospital can be exchanged with the help of FHIR resources. Okay, so how is it done and how we are actually exchanging the entire hospital data, we'll see as and when we progress. So next, let us quickly take a look at evolution of HL7 standards. Where were we? Where did we start to begin with, and where we are today? It all started back in 1980s, where there was a problem. So all the solutions that we have in today's world are basically solutions that we have to go ahead and solve a problem that might have occurred, right? So back then in 1980s, exchange of data was one of the major problems that they have seen. And they wanted to go ahead and have a mechanism so that data can be exchanged between two different systems. So that's where this they created HL7v2, and they created the format, they created the structure and all. But an official release has come into play in 1997, almost after 10 years, where they have released an official version of 2.3. 2.3 became such a massive hit that it has been used by most of the organizations to enable two apps talking to each other and all. Okay, and then we had HL7 version 2.5 released after 2.3. So this happened in 2003. These actually accounted for a lot of new fields or enhancements that were needed for 2.3, and everything was done and released in 2.5. Then next we had HL7 version 3 and CDA. So version 3 was released in 2005, but unfortunately it was not a massive hit. People did not go ahead and like the fact that version 3 has changed the entire format of the data, or format of the basically format of the HL7v2 pipe delimited format that we had, right? So that format is completely changed, which is a very big change for implementers, for real-time interfaces that are already implemented, right? And there is one other reason why V3 was not very much welcomed by the industry is value addition. So whenever you are upgrading your phone, any app on your phone, or you are upgrading your phone as a whole, why do we upgrade it? Just to see what all new features we have, right? And what is the value those new features are adding, right? That's what we do. In the same way, whenever someone is upgrading their interfaces from version 2 to version 3, are they getting enough value out of it when they perform that conversion? That is the first thing. Apparently, when you see the structure, and you'll understand that V3 is nothing but just a change of the structure with new concepts introduced, obviously. Change in structure, how do you manage code systems and all of these things are introduced in V3. But V3, but the industry was not very much ready for it, or ready to move to V3, because it was not adding very significant value. It's the same thing that it does, whether it is V2 interface or V3, it's the same thing that you achieve. Okay, so in that case, when we are already on track with V2, why do we need to go with V3? That is the perspective that people had, right? And then after that, we have, okay, let me tell you this one. Along with V3, there is another subset, another standard that was released in 2005, which is called as CDA, Clinical Document Architecture. So CDA standard is a massive hit because there was no proper mechanism in the healthcare space which would help us to exchange the documents, and CDA has solved that problem. All right. So a part of version 3 is successful, we can say, because CDA is still being used a lot out there in the industry. And then after that, we had a new standard, which is called as FHIR, that got kicked in 2010. And we see that it started as trial use, and then slowly there were a lot of people, a lot of communities who have actually contributed for improving FHIR. Okay, 2016 marked the major release of R3, and then 2019. After 2019, when R4 was released, that's where people started looking more into FHIR. So discussion on FHIR related implementations and all this all started in the last 1.5 year itself. Okay. And after that, in 2019, there was R4 release, which actually helped the entire industry to understand how the FHIR structure would be. And this is called as one of the stable versions since the beginning. Okay. So why do we need FHIR? So HL7 organization basically defines the interoperability standards, right? As I said, back in 2010, there was a lot of so there was a lot of data that is being saved. That is first thing. Second thing is the real-time data accession or real-time data access for the patient or any other third-party entities was really a need of the hour. This is about situation back in 2010, right? But there were no proper mechanisms to support that particular infrastructure or particular mechanism of extracting data, sending it out to whoever is calling your API and all. Patient engagement is not much seen anywhere because of this particular reason, because patient cannot go ahead and have access to his own data unless there is some sort of mechanism. So that is one of the problem. And mobile development and wearable technologies were increasing, which would actually generate a lot of information, right? Let's say you are capturing your heart rate every day, you're capturing your footsteps every day. So how are you going to make sure that you can send this data back to the EHR system or PM system? So there was no mechanism. Even that will tell us that why FHIR is needed. There is a vast increase in the amount of data that is being generated as per day-to-day analysis. And existing standards, which is nothing but HL7 V2, V3, and CDA, are basically lacking a mechanism to go ahead and tackle all of these problems where you say you can exchange the data through mobile app, you can post the data, you can receive the data and all. Right. And FHIR is truly appealing because of the fact that it uses complete web technologies to go ahead and implement an interface. Okay. And FHIR combines the best features of V2, V3, and CDA. Now, as there are three major terminologies or three major specifications that were released by the industry, FHIR has been built with all the good lessons and bad lessons that we had from HL7 V2, V3, and CDA. So FHIR comes in 4 flavors or 4 paradigms. One is REST APIs. So this is a mechanism how you see that data has to be exchanged between 2 different systems. Make sure that REST API in case if 2 systems are talking to each other. Let's say mobile app is talking to an EHR. REST API is the go-for option or go-to option that we have today. FHIR is being built to go ahead and replace CDAs and replace HL7 V2, V3 messaging protocols or messaging standards as well. So these are not at a fully developed stage yet. We are still working on it. The community is working on it to make sure that the entire data models or entire exchange standards that we have can be replaced with FHIR. So idea is to replace them, but we are not at that point right now, as I said. Last one is services. This is another paradigm in FHIR. So before we jump on, any question, jump on to the next topic. Any questions from anyone?
Yeah, yes, Dixon, I have one question.
Yeah, Narendra, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, for future, I mean, in future, what we are learning, I mean, for learning this, we have JSON and XML we need, right?
Right.
Apart from that, is any other programming language required?
Yeah, good question. So basically, programming language is not required unless you want to go ahead and become a developer, right?
Okay.
So if you're planning to become a developer, then you will need to have a programming knowledge. But if you're venturing like product managers or product owners or project managers or HL7 business analyst, so all of these roles can be performed without prior knowledge on these things. But for our course, what you need? For our course, a little bit knowledge on SQL, little bit knowledge on
Okay.
JavaScript is necessary. Rest of the things I am going to cover. Even JavaScript, I will be covering. The only thing that I do not cover is SQL. So
Okay.
basic understanding of SQL is necessary.
Okay.
That's
Okay,
all.
Dixon,
Apart
thank
from
you.
that, I'll be covering most of the things.
Yeah. Okay, Dixon, thank you.
Yep. No problem. Any other questions from anyone? Okay. So tomorrow, so we'll conclude today's session here. You can join tomorrow's session as well. Also for the first 3 sessions, we have free sessions. Anyone can go ahead and join. Welcome your friends to go ahead and join if they want to go ahead and join these 3 demo sessions. But after that, in order to continue, you may have to enroll into the program. So tomorrow, what we are going to take a look at is we'll talk about what a resource is. We'll talk in detail why we call certain thing as a resource. And how do we understand a resource, and we'll also see how resources interlink and work with each other to make sure that data is actually represented correctly. So we'll talk about a lot of things tomorrow, uh, especially the resource structure and its models and all. Okay, so we'll go ahead and conclude today's session here. So today we just had very basic introduction about FHIR. Why do we use? What is the history of FHIR? Tomorrow we'll jump into the actual content of FHIR. We'll talk about the structure and all. Okay, so if you do not have any questions, you can drop, or else please go ahead and drop your email address and phone number in the chat. And then we'll pick that information and reach out to you. And we'll also send the daily recordings. We'll also be sharing the documents that whatever I'm showing on the training, we'll share those documents through Google Drive. One more thing is, when do we have session? How many days? So 5 days a week, we'll be having a session at the very same time. I think it's 10:30 Eastern for you guys. I'm not very sure. Whoever is in the US, it's about it's at 8 o'clock in the morning IST, Indian Standard Time. Okay, how long the course is? It will run for 6 weeks to complete the entire course. Any other questions from anyone?
I have another question, Dixon.
Yeah,
Actually, after completing this course, we can complete, I mean, we can do the certification, right, on FHIR?
Not soon after completing this course. This course, see, any course that you go for is a coaching and mentoring aspect, right? It will
Okay.
coach you, it
Yeah.
will mentor you. I wouldn't say that as soon as you complete the course, you are ready to give the certification and will clear it. There is a lot of other things that you have to prepare for. So let's say if we talk about one each topic, we'll be covering what that topic is, what is the high level overview of that, how you can use it. But you may have to get into the details of that topic by going through the FHIR documentation itself. So
Okay.
with this, you will know what are the topics, concepts and all, and you'll have to prepare thoroughly again by through this guidance, and then give for an exam, not soon after completing the course. And
Yeah.
I don't think anyone would say that you will be able to crack FHIR soon after completing the course. There is
Yeah.
definitely good amount of learning that you have to do. Self-study is required.
Yeah. Okay, Dixon. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Any other questions from anyone? Yeah, Annabelle, you have a question?
No, Dixon, I don't have a question right now.
Yep,
Thank you.
sure. All right, thank you. Okay, so whoever has introduced yourself can drop. We'll continue tomorrow. Please make sure that you are joining tomorrow. So I don't think I have spoken with Tulsi and Vivek, so I'll just have a quick discussion with them. Hey, Tulsi.
Yeah, hi Dixon.
Hey,
This is
Tulsi. So we had a quick round of introductions at the beginning.
Yeah,
So
I have.
introduce yourself. Just cover these aspects. Where are you from, and what exactly you are looking for out of this training, and if you have any healthcare background.
Yeah, this is Tulsi. I'm from India itself. I'm I have got info from my sister.
Mhm.
I'm looking I will look for a demo whether it is compatible. Like I was working for a software.
Mhm.
Now I have given up that job. So I was checking
Got it.
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, Tulsi. Let's go to Vivek.
Hi Dixon, this is Vivek, and I work from Noida location in India, and I work for one of the uh, companies which is based in US, and I'm into healthcare, specifically US healthcare, for last 17 years, and I worked as a interface analyst, developer, then team lead, now as a managing a team which develops interfaces for that chain of hospitals in US. So I want to learn FHIR, know more about FHIR, because like I have knowledge of HL7 V2 versions, but to provide the value adds to the customer with like incoming FHIR coming in, I need to understand how I as a part of my organization can help my customer in using FHIR to like put the value adds and help in more patient care, these kind of things. So I like my intent for this training is to learn FHIR and then complete the FHIR certification.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you, Vivek. Thanks for that brief. All right, guys. So we'll continue tomorrow. We'll take a look at resource structure and understand the resource structure in detail. Thanks, everyone. You all have a good day.
Thank you.